The Center for Women's Ministry is a counseling ministry for women ages 13 and above. And we offer free counseling, support groups, Bible studies, prayer groups, and basically everything else that we do centers around that part of the ministry, or that basis of the ministry. Isaiah 61, verses 1 and 3. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed and qualified me to bring good news to the afflicted. He has sent me to bind up and heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the physical and spiritual captives, and release from darkness for the prisoners, to grant consolation and joy to those who grieve in Zion, giving them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, and the garment of praise instead of despair. And it was like the Lord drew a red mark around the words, to those who grieve in Zion. And the Lord said to me, Riova, I'm preparing you for a new ministry that's going to reach beyond the influence of your local church, and it's going to be to those who grieve in Zion. And I didn't know what that meant, or how I would be able to carry it out, or what the ramifications of it were, but I knew that I had a directive from the Lord. So over the next few months, I continued to really seek from the Lord what He wanted me to do. He finally just gave me this directive, and the directive was in 3 parts. He said, first, I want you to open a center, a ministry for emotional and spiritual healing for women. And I want to use you as a catalyst to pull the Christian community together in unity. And that's the reason that we're not connected with any church, but we're an entity within ourselves that pulls the community together. And number 3, I want to use you as an example of what I will do in response to obedience and faith. And he also went on and said, if you'll do these things, I'll provide you with the money, the know-how, the people, and the materials to get this job done. I'd have to say that the hardest part of that to carry out has been to be able to trust God for the money. But He has provided over and over and over again. Then one day I had a vision, and I've only had 2 visions in all of my life, but I had a vision of a building, and it had tall sides on it, or tall steeple on it, and short sides on it. And across the door of that building, it said Center for Women's Ministries. So for about 3 or 4 days, I ran around all over Bloomington trying to find what I thought looked like this building, and I couldn't find it. And finally, I realized that what he gave me was the name for the ministry, Center for Women's Ministries. And when we were trademark registering our name and our logo, that name was denied the first time we put our application through. And I said to the girls in the office, I know that's going to pass. We had an opportunity to go back again and plead our case, and I said, I know it's going to pass because that's what the Lord gave me. And the second time through, it did pass, and we are the Center for Women's Ministries. Well, anyway, sometime later, I began to build this file folder, this pink file folder that said Center for Women's Ministries in it, and anything that would come to my mind, a scripture that would come to my mind, a person that maybe I could talk to, anything that would come to my mind, I was putting that in this pink file folder. And one day I was at the figure salon, and this is a joke within our office because they say, well, Rio, anybody under 50 does not know what a figure salon is. It's the gym. But anyway, I was at the gym, and I was going through the paces at the gym, and I was going through my last bicycle, whatever, and the Lord said, you need to go to the north side of town and look at this building that used to be the Chamber of Commerce, and it used to house the Visitors Bureau. So I got in my car, and I went up there, and I pulled in the parking lot of this building. And all the emotions on the inside of me just broke loose, and I just started to cry. So I pulled my car in, and I got out of the car, and I looked all around the building. It was empty. I looked all around the building. And I knew in my heart this was where I needed to open a center for women's ministries. I took the lease to the lawyer that had drawn up our incorporation papers and left him. And in a couple days I went back, and he said, Riova, this lease is fine, but I need to talk to you. I'm really concerned about what you're doing. So he took me into this very intimidating legal table and sat me down. And he said, do you have any idea how much you are committing yourself to if you rent this building? And I said, oh yes, I know. $1,500 a month, $18,000 a year, $36,000 because I was signing a 2-year lease. And he looked at me and he said, how much money do you have in the bank? And I said, well, after I pay out this $1,500. Now, all this $1,500 did was give me 1 month's access so we could clean it up and get it ready to open. I said, I'll have $634. And that did not include any utilities. I hadn't put a desk in there. I hadn't put any chairs in there. I hadn't put anything in that building. All I had was $634. And he looked at me and he said, and you're quitting your job to do this? And I said, yes. And he said, do you think that's wise? And I said, no. But this is what I feel like God's asked me to do. Now, looking back on that, I still don't know how I had the courage to quit my job. I had very little backing. I mean, I had maybe $50 a month that had been promised me on this ministry that I was going to do. And I said, I just feel like this is what I'm supposed to do. So I picked up my lease and I walked out. And I hardly got to the lawyer's front door before Satan was on my shoulder saying, Riova, you know you can't do this. And I had to say, no, I know I can't. And he said, you're going to be a failure and you're going to be a fool. Now, the landlord, his name is Dick, had already told me as he and I had talked that his banker had said to him, Dick, this is the stupidest move you've ever made to rent her this space because she'll never stay. She won't be able to pay your rent. And he just thought that Dick was more astute than that as a businessman. So I already knew that, and Satan reminded me of that. And then I said, Lord, I didn't quit my job to be a failure. And I didn't quit my job to be a fool. But I'll be a fool for you because I will be obedient. Because it was total commitment and total pouring out, realizing that I couldn't do it myself. I thought the Lord was going to ask me to open up a center for women's ministries, and then eventually I was just going to retire, and really retire. But other communities began to call us and come talk to us and say, our community needs what you have to offer. How can you help us? So the thing that we do when their approaches are made to us about coming into their community, we help them by giving them instructions and providing materials and things like that for them so they can gather their people within their own community. Each community is responsible for their own building. They're responsible for their own volunteers. They're responsible for their own finances. We can't provide all of that out of headquarters. We just do oversight and help them. And it has been amazing to me how the communities have evolved. We're in several states at this time and growing. And then in 2004, previous to 2004, the Lord began to point out to me scriptures that would talk about ministry in other places, like in the islands and in the ends of the earth, and the expansion that was going to take place. And I felt like that I had enough scriptures that I knew we would be going international, but I did not think that would happen in my lifetime. But in 2004, we opened our first international center in Sierra Leone. And that morning, I walked into the office, and Cheryl, who works out of our office, was preparing something to put in a frame. And I thought she was getting things ready for the annual meeting. And so I just spoke and walked by and walked onto my office. And in about 5 minutes, she brought in and handed me this framed. It was really an email from Sierra Leone that said, "We are now opened and a bona fide center for women's ministries." I cried the whole day because it was something I never thought I would get to see. But God has been so good, and we just keep growing and expanding and growing and expanding. Our training materials that we have written are 14 two-hour sessions of basic peer counselor training, and that is being translated. The first language we translated it in was Spanish, and the second one was in Mandarin Chinese, and it is constantly being prepared for other people that speak different languages. And I can only say it's gone way beyond anything that I ever thought would happen. And all I know how to do is to give God the glory and the honor and the praise.